a near death experience changed his life. His work has now been to find the people that saved him. Let's roll right in. All right, welcome to the Work Sucks, but I Like It podcast. Today we have Ed McCarthy. He's a best selling author, he's a seasoned technology CEO, entrepreneur, and real estate investor. His near death experience inspired him to be an intentional father confronting what truly mattered. Ed, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tony. Appreciate it.
So, Ed, I usually ask, how people define work, but I guess I really want to jump into something different today and ask, talk to us about that near death experience. What was it? What was this near death experience?
Yeah, yeah. A friend of mine called up myself and two other friends, the four of us. He borrowed high performance snowmobiles from his boss on a beautiful, really nice sleds. We had this, and so I live. I should qualify. Currently live in Denver, Colorado, and we spent a lot of time in the Rocky Mountains. So we get a call from a friend. The four of us, good buddies, head up to the mountains. And on this glorious day, we just happened to got hammered with snow. 3 feet of snow fell over the previous, 3 or 4 days. And it was just an epic day. Four friends on trail, flying through the powder, the snow flying over our sleds and our heads and having just a ball. And we're 10 miles in, several hours backcountry, don't see a soul out there. We finally made a fateful decision and said, hey, I got a good idea. But the lead sled said, let's go off trail, which is usually a bad idea. Let's go off trail and let's go have some fun in this open meadow. And then we'll come back and head back to the truck and then head back home again. Everyone agreed. And all four sleds went off trail. We were racing across this meadow. And next thing you know, the first sled fell out of sight. Second sled fell out of sight. I was the third sled. And the fourth sled, we all fell into a crevasse and into that open looking, pleasant meadow was actually covered with all the recent snow, but it was avalanche runoff from the peaks that are all around us. So it was we don't even know how deep it was, 15 plus feet of snow. But here we were with our 500-pound sleds with the taillights facing up down into a 10-foot hole. We got banged up a little bit, but no one was seriously hurt. And we spent the rest of the 14 hours, really, the end trip, spent the night out there. It was sub below. We left, it was already below zero. Now it's, 10, 20 below zero. Late stage hypothermic. Had a miraculous savior that came in and saved us at 4 a.m. We ended up getting back, and that was a wake up call. And that's the first story in the book about the details. I get a lot more detail than that, but the first story in the book is exactly how this miracle happened and how it played out. And I think your readers would enjoy it. So that's how this all started. And at the time, my wife was home, and we had an 18-month-old son and a newborn daughter. So the only thing that was on my mind the entire time was not self-absorbed regrets about dying young. It was really how incredibly difficult I put my wife and my young children in if I didn't come home that day. So what morphed out of that was, well, we now know is the Life Letters book series. And here's a kind of a quick snapshot for those who can see it. It's Life Letters: 5 Decisions to Wealth, Wisdom, and Happiness. And you can find it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, or any other major retailer. But ultimately, that was a wake up call. And it changed my life. It changed my life for the better in so many different ways. I see the world differently, changed my career, changed my view on life and my priorities, and overall my happiness. As I talk about, it's 5 decisions to wealth, wisdom, and happiness. And ultimately, I was able to share my experiences of growing up in Boston, not far from you, and how I got here and how I was able to design my optimal lifestyle and ultimately reach my highest self. So that's that's the that's the kickoff story of the book.
Awesome. Well, what a
Yeah.
kickoff for us for sure. So, Ed, from when you got rescued out of that crevasse, I guess my first question is, how did you call someone? You had your cell phone. How did that How did they even know
Yeah.
you were missing? I guess I'm just curious from a
They
story
didn't.
standpoint.
No, that's the miracle part is, truly miracle. It's the only semblance of life out there. As you can imagine, there's 3 feet or more of snow. No one's going into his back. So at the trail, when we left that morning, earlier that morning, there was only one vehicle. It was a white Ford pickup with a trailer on it, that was in the at the trailhead, and there was no other sign of life at all in this back country. Well, just that's the miracle part is at 4 AM after we've already spent out there for, over 12 hours freezing, late stage hypothermic, I come to find out that the truck was owned by a father and son team who were out hunting in backcountry, and they had all the gear, the wood burning stove and the outdoor tent, and they did it right. And ultimately, that son happened to be what are the odds? The son was a competitive snowmobiler, and ultimately they happened to come at 4 a.m. when we were late stage hypothermic. It's 20 below. We were able to flag him down. He ultimately got on the sleds and showed us a better way to get out of that situation, and he saved our lives. So, and the it's not only a miracle that they came in at 4 AM, but also the fact that he was a competitive snowmobiler and knew how to get us out of there. So, the interesting part of all that is I still struggle with, was it divine or was it human? Because we made an agreement to meet back at the trailhead, and by the time we got on our sleds and got back to the trailhead, the father and son were gone. We never got their names. We never don't know what they look like because they were just completely covered in, mask and, like winter gear and, don't know what they look like, don't know their names. We're supposed to meet at the trailhead and give them their just reward. We were gonna take them out for the night and, or another night and go best steak dinner, best so we were so grateful they saved our lives. But, by the time we got there, poof, they were gone. So I write in the book, which is true, is I'm looking for another miracle, a second miracle, and I'm hoping my book finds them and they reach out
Oh,
to
I
me
love
to get
that.
their reward.
I love that, Ed. I love that. Wow, that is kinda like the divine almost. That's
Yeah,
crazy. I love it.
yeah,
So, Ed, now I wanna circle back to how do you define work? From that experience, it sorta opened up your mind, your life, the reality as it stood. How do you
yeah,
define work today?
yeah. Well, what I let me take a step back. The way I used to work is the way most people still work, right? And that is I used to trade time for money, right? So I would, and I don't do that anymore. So I reinvented myself in many different ways. So ultimately, my career at the time, I spent almost 20, almost 3 decades in high tech sales, right? I started off as an engineer, systems engineer, that morphed into a sales position and then ultimately to like a VP of sales. And I've been the CEO of several software companies throughout that over those 3 decades. And ultimately, I didn't realize it, but I was just trading time for money. I would show up and I'd work very hard, and and had a great teams and this and that. But ultimately, we were just grinding every single day. And I basically stopped doing that. I learned to get into instead of just trying to be an earner, I earn someone who earns money. I learned and taught myself how to be an owner, right? To be an owner of businesses that ultimately scale. Because when you're trading time for money, it does not scale, right? What scales is value. So if you can bring value to the table, that scales infinitely. But time doesn't. We all only have 24 hours in a day. We only have 8 to 10 hours a day to trade time for money. I don't care if you're getting paid 20 or 200 or $400 an hour, it doesn't scale, right? But learning to bring value to the table and bring value through owning a business, um, now that scales, and that was a pivotal change in my career. And going full circle back to that awakening after that near death experience, I said, I don't want to be away from my family. I used to travel all the time. I lived on the road. I was a high tech sales guy, global sales VP. I would live on the road, and I kind of just justified it like, oh, I'm making a bunch of money for the benefit of my wife and kids, which is true fundamentally, right? But again, it didn't scale. I was missing out on my kids' they're growing up since they were babies. I was missing out on a lot in life. So I had to reinvent myself, and I was able to successfully do that through several different business ventures. But I will tell the listeners that I failed at more businesses than I succeeded at. And the nice thing I want to emphasize to your listeners is you only have to get it right once, to really hit it when you're looking to convert from an earner to an owner. There's tremendous value in entrepreneurship. But even if you don't, and I coach a lot of people on this too, some people just don't have they either don't have the desire or they just have a fear associated with starting their own business. I mean, let's call it. It's not for everyone and it is scary. So within the letters of the book, so this life letters, and it's 26 letters, A through Z. So I make it very simple for everyone. It starts with accountability to boredom to career, all the way to the zone, getting in the zone, and that's creating systems, which I can elaborate on. But ultimately A through Z. But that C letter, C equals career letter, I talk in great detail about how to make that transition into from earner to owner. And one of those transition points is not only transition into, say, an entrepreneurship, but a word that I created out of the blue was called intrapreneurship. And intrapreneurship is to have an entrepreneurial mindset internally within a company, right? So you can be an entrepreneur running your own business, but not everyone is comfortable with that, or an intrapreneur. But again, it's still based on bringing value to the table. You're not trading time for money, you're trading value for money, which ultimately gives you the freedom of time.
I love that, Ed. So, especially for listeners that are 9 to 5 or the entrepreneur, because we have both of those on the show, you can be an entrepreneur, if you will, as a 9 to 5er, and then the entrepreneur, of course, is the entrepreneur. I'm just curious, Ed, and I love how you talked about this sort of transformation of trading time for money to ownership. Have you come across Robert Kiyosaki's work on cash flow quadrant?
I know
Is
it well.
that Sir Derived Perfect? Can you explain for the audience, please, what that is? I love this. Please go. Rock and roll.
Absolutely. So, for those who aren't familiar with it, highly recommend. It's been, man, probably probably close to 30 years now since Robert Kiyosaki released the Rich Dad Poor Dad series, and ultimately what he has is the four quadrants. And to oversimplify it, on one side you have either an employee or you're self-employed. On the other side, you're either a business owner or you're an investor, right? And in the long story short, you want to be on the business owner and the investor side. And Robert does a fantastic job of telling a story. I go into way more detail and way more granular, but Robert Kiyosaki did a phenomenal job with that Rich Dad Poor Dad series, and it helps the reader if you really are open minded to embracing it. It helps to change your mindset from an employee mindset into more of a business owner mindset, and I think that's really important, more so than, and that was 30 years ago when Robert was wisely advising that. But I take it to a completely different level because fast forward 30 years later, we are in the midst of unprecedented change. Like that's never happened in human history. And if you were, it's really a technology advancements, and the most common would be AI, robotics, to a lesser degree, nanotechnology, computing. And again, I spent 3 decades in high tech, so I know this subject better than most. But there is absolutely an AI tsunami barreling at every one of us right now, and it will. It's not an if, it's a certainty that it will displace lots of jobs, and in fact will make certain careers completely obsolete. So if you're in any form of position right now where you are doing any semblance of a redundant process, the kind of redundant process throughout, that ties to legal, accounting, customer service, of any form, right? I mean, go down the line, any semblance of the humanities, that is changing. It's going to change everything that we know it. In 5 years, I don't know, you'll barely even recognize the economy because it's that big a change. So I spent a lot of time with my 3 decades of technology experience elaborating on the value of pivoting from that earner to an owner mindset. And ultimately, another way of saying that is, most people today are really like consumers, right? That's all they do is consume, and they need to pivot into being more of a creator. right? Like, Tony, to your credit, you are creating something now with this podcast, right? You're a creator, right? Most people don't. They just want to consume social media. They want to consume gaming. They want to consume, products and material out there, and they're not creating anything. And AI effectively will is going to force a lot of hands and people to look at things differently. So I encourage you to take a look at my book, Life Letters: Five Decisions to Wealth, Wisdom, and Happiness. And within those 26 letters, they're all broken down into one of three topics, and that's wealth, wisdom, or happiness. And the wealth, out of the 26, we have seven on wealth. One of them is career. That's the only one I addressed so far, right? But then there's 11 on wisdom, and that has to do with the philosophy and the psychology associated with life and success. And then finally, the happiness has eight letters out of the 26. So combined, 7, 11, and 8 is 26 letters. So it's something for everyone, and depending what age and stage you're in right now. But ultimately, the whole goal is this book is transformational. It's a transformational master plan to help anyone at any age or stage reach their highest self through optimal lifestyle design. So I highly encourage you folks to take a look at it in the AI era that where it's not even just coming, it's here, right? It's already here, but it's going to be coming barreling at us. That tsunami is just going to be hammering us even more and more. And if you don't pivot in today's world, you're going to have some challenges ahead of you, depending on your career path.
Awesome. Well, first off, Ed, thank you for kind of recapping Kiyosaki's work. I'm also a fan of him as well, moving from the left side to the right side of the quadrant. So thank you for that. So one of the things we talk about on the show, Ed, is that success is not a matter of good luck, but good skills. And you've talked about sort of making this transition and sort of, excerpts from your book and lessons. What is one skill you can tell the audience today to work on to be more successful? What's this one skill that you think is important today?
Oh man. If I had to pick that one skill, I'd say creative thinking. Just you got to think differently. You have to think in more critical thinking or creative thinking, depending on how you want to define that. But uh, but ultimately, again, within the C career chapter, I talk about the C8 principle, and the C8 principles is eight principles all start with C, and the first one is really critical thinking. So I think that's very important. But it's also challenging for people to reinvent themselves. So within the book, I highly recommend people to take a look at the X letter. Again, A through Z chapters. Letter X is your X factor. So in there, I prove that every one of us out there has at least three, sometimes five, sometimes seven, but a minimum of three X factors or such natural skills that they're so natural that I don't even barely pay attention to them. Most people spend their energy focusing on what they do wrong. Right? Like, well, I'm terrible at this. I need to. I'm terrible at these three things, so I'm going to focus all my energy on getting better at those three. Right? Versus what I encourage people to do is go to the X factor chapter and ultimately identify the top three minimum things that you do right that are so natural to you, don't even really think twice about it, right? It's where you get compliments from everyone that, oh, you're so good at this. And wow, such a natural speaker, or you're such a natural writer, or you're so creative with this or that. And combine those skills. Find the three plus skills that you have and combine them into a potent formula that is your X factor, right? So ultimately, I think that would be a great next step for your listeners is use this coaching within the book to be able to identify your strengths and ultimately find that potent formula for success because it's right there. And I'll show you. I walk you right through the roadmap on how to do it.
So I hear a lot, you probably come across as well in your travels and your lessons and reading books and whatnot, that they say to find your passion. When you talk about an X factor, right? How do you equate that to your passion to this? I guess, is it a dream job? What do you think of the two? Your X factor and this sense of passion with work.
Yeah. So, well, what all due respect, I don't subscribe to the notion of follow your passion. And
Good.
again, I'll revert back to the C career letter.
Yeah.
Now, there's some exceptions. I'm gonna pick a, no one really knows, but maybe 1% of us out there that was passionate about a particular, area. I think doctors come to mind, right? A doctor is like, I want to be a doctor, right? And I'm going to go through the 12 years of education and all the residency, and I'm going to do this, and I want to be a doctor for the rest of my life, right? Um, I know a lot of doctors. A lot of friends of mine are doctors, and they were that passionate about it when they were 20, and maybe to a lesser degree when they were 30. But now they're pushing 50, right? And they're not passionate about it anymore, right? But the difficult thing of being a doctor or those medical skills, that it's really difficult, almost impossible to repurpose those skills into a different trade, right? So you know what you know, and that's what you know. So it's very dangerous in following your passion, because will that passion last for decades, right? Will that give you meaning for decades? Probably not. What I found more effective is go to your X factors, find your strengths, find what you're great at, because if you're great at something and you can turn that not only into something that you're interested in, but also you can make money at it, right? Where you find your passion is, if you have a desire to be married with children, but you're paying for your family's optimal lifestyle, right? You're paying for your optimal lifestyle. You're vacationing well. You're not stressed over money. You took that potent formula of your X factor and you brought that into a field that wasn't your passion, but it becomes your passion because it enables your optimal lifestyle. So I think I just warn people to being very careful, because this follow your passion advice is splayed all over commencement speech, every high school commencement speech or college commencement speech, or every counselor and teacher and even parent. Follow your passion to prosperity. I mean, it's cute, it's warm, it's fuzzy, but it's also very misleading. And I think ultimately people need to reevaluate. And this has never been more relevant in the AI age, because the AI is just going to completely eliminate many of the professions that we know of today. So find your X factors, find what you're great at, be great at it. And I use analogy even in the book is, you know, you could be a pig farmer, right? And is anyone passionate about being a pig farmer? No. But if you fly in private and you're paid for your kids' college and you're financially free for life and living your optimal design, all of a sudden you're passionate about pigs. Right? You're passionate about pigs. It's all relevant to where it is, and that was mine. I was never passionate about IT. I was never passionate about pivoting and getting in deep into a big real estate career. Right? Those weren't passions; they were means to an end, and they served me very well. Now, what is a passion is this book series. This Life Letters book series has become a passion. But I'm beyond financially free. I've been retired for. I could have retired 2 decades ago. I'm just too high energy, and I can't retire. I tried to retire twice. Yeah, it didn't work. Wasn't happy. And but ultimately now I have the financial means. I have the luxuries of doing something that I'm passionate about. But when you're young, focus on that optimal lifestyle design and doing what's necessary to be successful at that.
So, Ed, I know some of the listeners are like very intrigued with all of this in the sense that they're stuck at their job, right? They're catching on that they got to identify their X factors. I agree with you. I'm not a fan of the woo woo self help with all the passion bullshit. But I guess,
Right.
like, what I know that's how I feel too. That's why I was laughing. I'm like, man, this guy's perfect. Well, help the listener here when they're stuck in their job and that sucks, right? What can they do to start working towards these things, right? Their
Yeah.
job blows, their boss sucks, workplace is terrible. What do they do? Do they make a drastic pivot? What do you recommend?
I think if you're that person that's listening, I think there's an unprecedented opportunity in front of you right now, and it is AI induced, right? Because when I was the CEO of several software companies, I had to hire, software developers. I had teams of software developers. I had sales teams. I had marketing teams. I had legal teams. I had all the, HR. I had all these like, people, right? And it was very difficult, very expensive. And I had to raise money for venture capitalist money and be able to get these businesses off the running. Those are all those headwinds are effectively eliminated with AI. right? You can be a one man shop, a one person shop, and build a thriving business with the existing technology that's today. There's never been an easier time to be an entrepreneur. There's never been a better time to be able to break out on your own. Right. So, for those people that are struggling within a company, maybe they see the writing on the wall like, oh, I am in a process oriented role. The probability of AI, stealing my job is high, or at least displacing me to a certain degree. The time is now to make that change and go back to the X factors, find out what you're great at, pull that together, and then ultimately build a plan by leveraging AI technology to start your own business. It's as much damage as AI is going to both, giveth and taketh away, right? It'll giveth and so many different options for people that really just not only embrace AI, but just bathe yourself in it. I mean, completely immerse yourself in AI technology. There's loads of classes that are out there on how to leverage the technology today. Take the classes while you're employed. Do it at nights and weekends, right? Start nights and weekends, right? Learn to how to be a real estate investor, right? That goes back to Robert Kiyosaki, but also his Rich Dad Poor Dad book, which is phenomenal. And in my book as well, we talk about in detail, right? Learn to be a real estate investor. Why do you want to be a real estate investor? Well, you want to build passive income streams, right? So that you're buying a property. It's keep like simple, like maybe in my ideal scenario, buy a fourplex property, live in one of those units, rent out the other three units. Those three units, if you bought it well, will more than cover the entire expenses. So you're living for free, right? And maybe if you do it well, you're actually making money every month, but you eliminated all your expenses for living. So that's one hack, one life hack that you can do while you're employed. In fact, it's better to do it while you're employed because the banks will be more apt to give you a loan because you have a W-2 income, right? So that's one pivot you can make into real estate. Another pivot is just taking those classes online and even tell your company, hey, company, I want to be an intrapreneur, right? I don't, I want to be, I want to bring value to this company. Will you pay for these classes? And I'm going to implement this AI technology to the best of my ability, and I'm going to be an intrapreneur, an internal entrepreneur, right? So that's a way of potentially avoiding not getting laid off when AI takes your, potential job. So pivoting and immersing yourself in AI is the path to go at this point in your career.
No, that's great advice, Ed. So this is the Work Sucks, but I Like It podcast. What is one thing that sucks about your work, Ed, and what are you doing to make it not suck?
One thing that sucks about mine.
Yes, about your work.
Oh, man. Well, I, uh, I love what I do. I would, so what I refer to is again with the book is, here's a snapshot of it is following the steps to your highest self. So I can honestly say that I have reached my highest self, my highest. But what's the definition of my highest self? Would be very different than Tony's definition or anyone that's listening. But my definition is I want financial freedom. Got that. I only spend time with the people I want to spend time with. I only do the things that I want to do, right? I'm financially free, have been for a long time. And so I've designed my optimal lifestyle and able to reach my highest self. So I can't say there's anything that sucks about my career. And if there's something stuff that I don't like real, I have small teams that run my businesses day to day, and they do a lot of stuff that I don't want to do, right? To be able to run the business, but ultimately I outsource that to other people. But that's in an enviable position. I think most people want to get there, but I give you the roadmap, the master plan on how to reach your highest self through optimal lifestyle design.
I love that, Ed. So you've talked a lot about your book. So if the listeners want to pick up your book and learn more about this, where's a good place for them to land?
Yeah. Well, Amazon.com. Again, it's Life Letters by Ed McCarthy. And Life Letters are 5 decisions to wealth, wisdom, and happiness. So Amazon, Barnes and Noble, every major retailer in the world now has this book. It's been a tremendous success. We only released it a little over 100 days ago, and it's already a best-selling book, which is amazing. We have sales in 11 countries.
That's
where
awesome.
we're just rocking. We're rocking across the board. We have global distribution. It's self-published. I self-publish, so which is a rarity to have that kind of success so early. So, but it's been a lot of fun. Or the simple way of finding us is just go to our website. It's thelifeletters.com, lifeletters.com. And you can buy the book there. That'll give you just a direct link to Amazon. But we also bring a lot of added value, and I practice what I preach. It's not just trading time for money, as I alluded to. You got to bring value for money. So we offer. Highly encourage your listeners to go to thelifeletters.com, and you can sign up for our free newsletter. So every other twice a month, we send out a newsletter that enhances the messaging within the book, and that's also a newsletter's A through Z. And so every other week, second and fourth Wednesday of every month, we release a newsletter. I release a newsletter. We also have what ultimately this book is called wisdom transfer. So this is my best ability. That's my best effort and ability to be able to transfer my wisdom, my experiences to the reader, right? Originally was written for my kids, and then ultimately that morphed into sharing it with the world. But I'm only one guy with one life experience. So I created with my IT background, I created the first of its kind wisdom transfer platform. And as the name implies, think of Reddit. It's like very much like Reddit, where it's a open forum of sharing your wisdom on all aspects of topics that call wealth, wisdom, and happiness. So I encourage people to join the newsletter. That's free. I enjoyed participate in the wisdom transfer platform. You'll learn a lot, but also it's kind of give to get. We're hoping you can give. And if you don't have any specific wisdom to share, share your favorite quote, share your favorite book, share your favorite poem, share something. Pay it forward by giving to the community through the wisdom transfer platform. So it's free. You just register and you're on. And then we have book 2 is coming out in October, book 3 in the following October. So we have a lot of added value that we've brought, and that all can be found at thelifeletters.com.
Awesome, Ed. Well, thanks for being on the show today. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Ed talks about trading time for money, and we dive into one of my favorite views on money from the author Robert Kiyosaki in his book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He puts an interesting spin on this too and talks about putting value on what you do. And as you know, I love the word value. He talks about the meaning beyond what something is worth. If you don't want to be an entrepreneur, Ed states that you can be an intrapreneur. It's about value, not trading time for money, trading value for money. Ed says the skill is creative thinking. So today, success is not a matter of good luck, it's good skills. How do you get creative? It isn't about passion, and no, it doesn't mean you need to be an artist. It starts with recognizing what your strengths are and working on those. Get creative on how you can use your strengths, and that's the skill. We'll see you next time. And there's a wind that blows across the plains, and it sings